What is going on, guys? This is Gene Jensen. It is time for another Friday Night Live. All right. How is everybody doing today? I just barely got in. I've been in North Georgia mountains trout fishing with my kids. It's been fun with no cell service. It's like 40-minute drive to find cell phone service. So it's a lot of fun. I'm excited to be here with you guys. Let me jump on the comments, see what all is going on. Got a couple of really cool announcements today before we get things rocking and rolling, but we'll let some people jump on. Holy cow, just jumped to 62 people. What's going on, everybody? What's going on? Pilot, awesome. Wait about 5 minutes to ask your questions. I'll totally forget that one, and you can just jump on there and ask in a minute. I usually wait for people to jump on, and then I go and do a little bit of business, and then we get rocking and rolling with questions. So same with you, Joe. What's going on, everybody? Hey, Hudson Hollis, Cody McCormick, that Mosier boy, how you doing? Good afternoon or good evening. What's up, Jacob Slater? How are you, Jacob? Jacob was a little bitty kid living behind me in Augusta, and his mom and dad, when he was born, they lived in Hawaii next to us on post. So good to see you, Jacob. How's shooting the shotgun happening? I've been excited. It's been fun watching you shoot, trap, and skeet over the years. It's been pretty neat. So anyway, I'm on the river now. Water temp 77. We'll get to those questions in a minute. Well, catching nothing but sunburn here on North Carolina. That reminds me, David, you kayakers, wear long pants. Sunscreen's great, but I'm telling you, wear long pants. I will never kayak again without long pants on. I have burned the crap out of my knees and legs too many times. But anyway, let's see. Gary Cooper, how you doing? All right, so everybody joining me on my podcast, welcome. For you guys who don't know, this also broadcast after the fact on most of the podcast channels or whatever websites. Everybody except for, I think, iTunes is the only one I'm not on. So you can listen to my whatever if you want to listen to me. Anyway, you can listen to me in your car when you're traveling. So, all right. Let's get into a little bit of business. I've got a couple of announcements. One, they're both really, really cool. I'll get the promo one out of the way real quick. Let me open up my. Okay, so I don't know if you guys can see this or not. I'm gonna try to show it on my phone. And there you go. This is on my Instagram, but it's a collaboration between Angler and 13 Fishing. And basically what it says is you can go, I'll read it. It says 13 Fishing is challenging you to catch and log 15 fish in the Angler app throughout the month of June. Once you've completed the challenge, you'll be rewarded with a 20% discount from 13 Fishing. And they're coming out with new rods and reels this next month. Anyway, upon completion, post your completion badge on social media using the hashtag My13Concept Challenge to finalize your entry. The details and stuff are on my Instagram page, or also on Angler's Instagram page. Angler basically is this button that I wear on my hat. And look, this one's got the 13 logo on it. But and it works through the app, and you click on it, and it logs everything about your fish, logs your GPS and everything else, so you can go back and in the future and look at it. So, holy cow, Tim! Thanks for the $15. I'll get to your question here in just a minute. Now, another thing I'm doing with Angler this month is the last Sunday of the month, and I think it's the 30th. I'm not going to look, but basically the last Sunday of the month, there is a live Facebook Live thing on Angler's channel, and I'm fishing head-to-head against Dave Lefebvre, the MLF pro, Dave Lefebvre. And he's going to be on Lake Erie, I'm pretty sure, and I'm going to be either Chickamauga or Nickajack or somewhere along the Tennessee River. I haven't decided where I'm going to fish yet. I wish I could fish the lake I'm catching all my big ones on right now, but there's zero cell service on that thing. So it's probably a good thing. I don't want to burn my spots. So anyway, so that's the last Sunday of the month. It'll be from 4 o'clock in the evening till 8 o'clock in the evening Eastern on Angler's Facebook page We are also having a couple of a pre-live like the Wednesday before. I'll post all that on my social media, and then a post-game show a couple of days later. So it's going to be freaking awesome. I can't wait. Dave and I are good friends. He's already started ragging on me. I'm going to start ragging on him. I sent him pictures of all the big ones I've been catching this week, so it's been a lot of fun. So anyway, that should be a lot of fun, and hopefully I can catch a fish. I haven't fished those lakes in over a year, so we'll see what happens. Okay, Tim says, I just put, and thanks for $15 again, man. He says, I just put a Minn Kota iPod on my SS127 red line with what battery are you using for your motor guide on your 127? And also, are you cutting the shaft down at all? Thanks. Okay, I'm not using a motor guide on my 127. I've got a Torqeedo, but I just put a new motor guide on my other one, my black Bonafide. I'm using a deep cycle battery I just had around the house. Unfortunately, it's a 31 series, so it's heavy as all get out. And I will probably change it to 100 amp hour, 120 amp hour lithium battery as soon as I have the money to buy one. But you could probably get it by with just your standard 24 class deep cycle battery and be just fine. It really is. It just slows it. That one I've got is so heavy. It's like 75 pounds, and it slows down the boat a little bit. But my son's out paddling or out in fishing in it right now, so you should be able to do that. Well, anyway, thanks for this $15. But this angler thing is going to be really cool, guys. So stay tuned to my social media. I'll talk about it next week and the week after once all the plans are finalized. And like I said, it's going to be 4 hours live of me hopefully just tromping on Dave Lefebvre. So he's got a great personality. I've always enjoyed being around him. Him and I he cracks me up big time. We have a good time together. But oh, another thing I meant to talk about, my arms. I've had tendonitis for the last 3.5 months. To the point where if I set the hook on a spinning rod, I would drop the rod. I had no grip in my right hand. My left hand, the tendonitis was in my wrist, and setting the hook felt like I was breaking my hand or breaking my wrist every single time. So what happened was I changed my diet. I went back to the keto diet, which I knew was a lot of inflammation gets cleared up when you go on keto, when you get rid of all the carbs and get rid of all the sugar and that kind of stuff. 4 days later, I don't have any pain. You know, I still have the popping in my wrist because I did a little bit of damage to my wrist while I was doing that, but there's no pain. I can set the hook. I can catch big fish now. It all's good. But it was just a diet change. How crazy is that? All right, we'll just go back to tucker fishing. Oh man, thanks Gary Cooper. Thanks for the comment. All right, let's get. I forgot to bring the water down here, so I'll probably get a dry mouth halfway through the night. Gerald Waters, I'm having a really hard time getting a pic of my shoal bass on the measuring board. They're camera shy and flop right off. Any suggestions? There's several things people do. I hold a death grip on them. I put them on my catch board, and I bump their nose all the way up against the bump board and push them kind of hard up against the bump board and squeeze fairly hard. But the biggest thing is don't release any. Once you get your pressure on the fish, if you release any of that pressure, they're going to feel it and they're going to flop. I've noticed that. It doesn't matter. It's just a teeny tiny little release of that pressure, and they're going to start flopping. Jordan lost 3 fish last week fishing for the state challenge, and but a lot of people go nose down. They put their bump board angled down into their boat. Other people go to the bank and pull their kayak up on the bank and lay their bump board down lengthwise and do it that way. You can do that in the KBF. I know some tournaments don't allow you to get out of your kayak. There's several different options, but the biggest thing I've realized that the minute the very split second you release a little bit of pressure from that fish, it's going to try to get away. So, let's see. That Moser boy says, Fluke Master has brought my bass fishing a long way. Thank you, sir. That's awesome, man. Hey, you guys, be sure to hit the thumbs up button while you're hanging out listening to my ugly voice. 60-degree water, 2.2 to 4 feet deep pond. Half depth is weeds. Suggestions. Keep up the great tips. Whew. On a small pond, I always say go to a Mojo rig or a split shot rig. They're basically the same thing. They just use different kind of weights. And it's just a little small worm hook with a, put a trick worm, a 7-inch trick worm, something like that. And then 5 or 6 inches above it, pinch a little 16th ounce split shot onto your line and drag that over the grass and through the grass. And you can shake it to get the grass off, and then use a straight tail worm because it's got a pointed nose, and the grass that you get hung in will just kind of slough off of it as you're shaking it. So that's what I would do anyway. So Tyler Sexton, man, you are you got to stop giving me money. I really appreciate you, man. He says, hey, Gene, just getting you used to throwing the Carolina rig. Haven't used it much. Is throwing a 10-inch worm mag worm okay? Yes, the Zoom mag worm or mag 2 or the old monster. That's a go-to for me. Try a Cinco too, or use one of the cheaper stick baits. Don't use a Cinco because they'll tear off real quick, real easy on the cast. Also, what colors are best for the bottom, contrast or brightness? I'm still going to go with my go-tos. Green pumpkin if it's clearer water, black and blue if it's got a little bit of water, a little bit of stain to it. A plum or some type of a pink, but you got to understand at depth that grays out. I don't know what the bass see down there with a pink worm, because the color red grays out real shallow, and so they may just see a gray worm swimming through, being drug on the bottom. But that's the biggest thing, is just kind of the same thing, natural colors or dark colors. I try not to go bright. I want to keep it natural as I can. So Michael Filardo says, it worked, Fluke. Thanks for your blessing the other week. I finally caught my first bass of the year after 6 months of trying. That's awesome. Congratulations, Michael. That's so cool. Oh, man. Megan Cooper, what would you throw when a pond is filled with muck algae on top and the bottom? Ooh. I don't know what kind of, I'm thinking it's probably filamentous algae you're talking about. Man, I'm still going to go with something like a split shot rig, just to see something that won't get hung in it. If I could see the water, I could tell you what to throw, but something like maybe even a weightless worm. Just a straight tail worm that's on the end of the hook that you throw in a spinning rod and jerk it around like you would a jerk bait. You could try that. Those stay pretty weedless a lot, especially if you've got stuff on the top and the bottom. So Black Bass Angler, how you doing, girl? She says, what do you keep from getting spun out during a tournament? When I start to get spun out, I do what I call a reset. And I do this when I'm fishing anytime, when I'm not catching fish, and I know I know they're biting somewhere, and I know that I should be catching fish. I do a reset. I stop, I turn around, I look down at the water, I say, okay, what's the water color? And I do the same thing I do is when I get to a lake in the morning, I do the same thing when I'm doing a reset. What's the water color? What color lure should I be throwing? What are the weather conditions? What have the weather conditions been over the last three days? What am I missing? What have I been doing that's not working? What else? Am I fishing too fast? Am I fishing too slow? All kinds of stuff go through my head, but the biggest thing is I just reset the whole thing. I throw everything out the door for what I've been doing, and I do something totally different. And that's usually what I keep my. I don't get spun out a lot in tournaments unless I'm just pissed, and then I just can't get over it. And I was mad at the Lake Fork tournament. That's why I only caught one fish, and I caught that one on accident. So yeah, when I get spun out, I usually do a reset. Garrett Hinkle, huge fan, just got into kayak fishing at Chester Frost Park, close to you. That's awesome, man. I might be there here shortly. If I end up fishing against Dave Lefebvre up at Chattanooga, you'll see me at Chester Frost a few times. So I'll be in the big boat, though. Let's see. I always forget to hit the button I have it on my PFD. Gordon, this is what I do. When I am forgetting the button, I put it on my hat and I turn it upside down and put it right here where I can see it in my eye, but it doesn't get in the way of anything. So you'll know that I've been forgetting to push it when I have it flipped over on my hat. So I don't ever put it on my PFD. I'd forget it every day. or every second. That's for sure. Pilot Awesome. Hi, I'm a beginner that just broke my reel. It was a push button. What cheap spinning reels would you suggest? I'm going to give you a price range because I don't normally suggest what exactly spinning reels, but 13 does make some pretty good $40, $50 spinning reels. The Creed K and the Creed X, but get yourself a budget and actually save your money is what I tell you. Save your money and get one between $40 and $60. Don't get one less than 40. And I'll tell you why. I learned this the hard way many years ago when I was a newlywed. I've been married 20 years, but I was stationed out at Fort Gordon, Georgia. I was in a little 10-foot John boat that I had borrowed from my father-in-law, and I was fishing a beaver pond, and there was a beaver hut, and I threw a fluke on a spinning reel, and spinning rod, and I'd bought the spinning reel from Walmart. It was a cheap one. I wasn't making a lot of money in the Army anyway. And the biggest bass that I've ever seen in the water, even to this day, grabbed hold of that thing. And I set the hook, and it took drag, and then the drag caught because it was a cheap piece of crap reel. It was a Shimano. But anyway, the drag caught, and the line broke. And that junky drag is the reason I lost that big fish. And I went home that day, and I told my wife, I will never buy another inexpensive reel ever again. I'm going to always buy quality, and I proceeded to learn what quality was. And so that's what I would do, man. Just kind of make a budget, save your money if you don't have the money yet, and then get one between, like I said, between $40 and about $60. You can get a pretty good spinning reel, and you'll be just fine. Any suggestions on catching big bass right now on silted ponds? Ooh. Don't drag anything on the bottom if you can afford not to. But a good bait for silted pond really is like a Tokyo rig. You know, you got the weight goes down in the silt and the bait stays up above it, and you just drag it over top of the silt. You can try that. A drop shot works really good because you don't want the bait to sink down in the silt, like I say all the time. So you want to keep it up above it. So think about different things that you can do fishing really slow, but keep it out of the silt. So that should be pretty good. Who donated $5? Matt Mason. Thanks, man, for the $5. Let me get down here and find your comment. What areas would you look for and baits would you use in the post spawn in dirty water? Post spawn in dirty water. Top water buzzbait. A buzzbait comes to mind. A whopper plopper, something that makes a lot of noise. Another thing that comes to mind is really I would fish a spinner bait. And I don't know how dirty water you're talking about. If it's just stained and you can see a foot in the water, then you can fish just about anything on the bottom. But my first thought is top water when you're talking post spawn. And then once the sun gets up and starts shining on the water, you can go fix a Texas rig, jig, just about anything else, and they'll be able to find it. But darker colors and the bass, the dirtier the water, the closer the bass get to cover. And it doesn't have to be thick cover. Literally, it can be a stick. And as long as they have that stick sitting right up against their eye, they're comfortable. But when the water gets really muddy, they get tight to cover, and it takes multiple casts to the same piece of cover, and they get shallow too, and it takes multiple casts to get it. So, what is a good fish finder under $250 for kayak fishing? The Hook 2 look at the Lowrance Hook 2. The reason I say that is they designed that to be very, very basic and very easy to use. And it's kind of a set it and forget it. When you see me using my fish finder, I'm always adjusting things. I'm always trying to get it exactly right. But that fish finder itself, and they got several different sizes, and that's where your price range is. But yeah, that's a really good fish finder. George C. Hey, just joined the club. I really enjoy your videos. I've learned a lot. I would like to see you fish a video on steep banks, 20 to 60 feet of water in the heat of the summer. Any plans? Go search on my channel for the video of bluff fishing, because they're called bluff walls. And I think I just have one. I might have two videos on fishing bluffs. That's one of my favorite things to do. but it's a really good video and it covers the details about how I do it almost every time I'm fishing a bluff wall. And that should give you a lot of information on that. Yeah, man, appreciate the question. That's a good question. Did you ever use tungsten jigs? And so what trailers would you use? And colors. I don't use tungsten jigs. I'm sorry, I was reading something else. I don't use tungsten jigs. I just use standard jigs, but my trailers are pretty simple. In the summertime, a Rage Craw or a Rage Chunk that's got something that's got a lot of chop on the claws. And in the wintertime, I use a Zoom Baby Super Chunk Junior is what it is. Zoom Super Chunk Junior, and it doesn't have hardly any action on the claws. A lot of action in the summertime, very little action in the wintertime, and that's where I keep it, man. So goodness gracious, all you crazy people donating to me. That's awesome. Appreciate it. Casual Bass Guy, best bait and technique for sand bottom, small river. Only get about 8 feet deep in the deeper holes. A lot of stream is 4 to 6 feet deep. Couple of things. That when I'm fishing small little rivers with a lot of current, I like to use moving baits because everything's moving and the bass really do react to good moving baits. But that little baby bull shad that I made the video of is a really good one. I like to throw the big bull shads in those, the big 6 inches, but the baby one just to keep the price down. Spinner bait's really good. Inline spinner's really good. A fluke and a paddle tail swim bait are the ones I'm thinking of. Ed Wolf, man, thanks for the $10. It says, keep it up, Gene. Hopefully you will be doing some fishing on some deep, usually clear water sand pits on Sunday, midday down here in Savannah. Any tips? Have had a lot of rain today. Whew. Let's see. Hopefully be doing some fishing on some deep, clear water sand pits. Man, drop shot, dude. I'd love to see you catch one on a drop shot down there if the water's not too stained or too muddy. If it's sandy bottom, man, you can't beat a Texas rig and a jig. You really can't. When I'm fishing sandy bottom lakes, I'm always wanting to drag a jig just because it works so well during that period of time. So Joseph Keller, man, thanks for the $2. Is you and Scott still working together? No, we are not. We cut ties about a month and a half, 2 months ago, something like that. So Bob, thanks for the $20, brother. I appreciate it. No comment from you, but I appreciate you, man. Gosh, you guys are awesome. Oh, man, you're making me get way ahead of all these comments, though. Do you have any tips for not getting snagged as much while bank fishing? Paul, let me think. The biggest thing I do when I really, truly don't want to get snagged is I tend to bury the tip of my hook in my worm. And I love to fish a Texas rig from the bank or anywhere that I'm going to be getting snagged. And I made that video about fishing one slow just yesterday, but I bury that hook in that worm. I don't like expose it. I don't bring it around the other side and skin hook it on the other side. I bury it in the worm, and I just remember that. And I remember I've really got to set the hook hard to get that hook to drive through that worm and into that fish. It's kind of a give and take, but I don't snag up nearly as much when I do that. And another thing you can do is peg that sinker down, and that sinker won't get away from the bait and won't wrap up so much. You're still going to get snagged, but you're not going to get snagged as much. So good question. Finally getting the boat at Bonafide out tomorrow. Stephen Guthrie, good deal, man. That's awesome. I hope you're taking your boy with you. Goodness, I got my whole family over here at Rocky Mountain camping. 25 of us. It's nuts, and that's where I'm heading right after here to just go camping. We're going to go drown some crickets tomorrow. Watched your video on JJ's watched your video on Jig Texas Rig. They seem to have almost the same philosophy, slow and on the bottom. Am I right? Pretty close. I fish a jig a little bit faster sometimes because a crawfish tends to be a little faster. I might hop it a little bit more, but it's pretty close to the same way that I would fish a jig. But sometimes they don't hit a jig. Sometimes they'll want a worm. But man, I've caught some giant fish this week. Oh, I think I have 2 over 7, 2 over 8, and 1 over 9 in the last 7 days. Man. Gene, we are hitting the Flint next weekend. Got the bull shad loaded. Good. You should come with us and participate in the PSKA tournament. I would, but we're going on vacation, or we're getting ready to go on vacation, and I've got to load some serious videos for this next week, and get my son to edit it. Because you notice my videos look a whole lot better lately. It's because my 16-year-old is editing my videos, and he's the one shooting the video and producing it. So I'm kind of taking him under my wing and letting him do his thing. But he's made me look real good. I'm proud of him. Nicole Enix, I need some tips on finding fish when it gets hot and the bass go deep. I'm gonna assume you don't know how to. I mean, because I assume this with everybody. You got to know how to read a topo map. And when the fish go deep, I fish by my map. I fish long points. I fish creek channels. And the biggest thing is you got to have a fish finder. At least I do. I can't fish out deep offshore without a fish finder. I've tried and I just can't do it. You go find the bait fish. The bait fish are going to be somewhere around the same depth. You'll be at 10 feet, 15 feet, 20 feet. They're all going to be around the same depth. And then the bass are going to be at that depth, but they may not be out around those schools of bait fish. They're going to be wherever a point is at that depth, or a drop off or a creek channel at that depth. They're going to be sitting there waiting for those bait fish to swim by so they can ambush them. They're lazy. They want to sit on the couch until the popcorn bowl comes by, and they're going to eat the popcorn. You can't think about it. You're sitting on the couch and your kids and wife or whatever, your girlfriend, boyfriend are passing popcorn bowls around. You're going to get some popcorn out of it when it goes by. And that's what the bass are going to do. They're going to sit there and wait, and they're going to eat the popcorn when it comes by. Let's see. What is the best moving bait rod? There's two best all around moving baits. And when he says moving baits is what I call them moving baits too. Spinner baits, buzz baits, crank baits, anything that's moving in the water that you throw out and reel back in. Medium, heavy, moderate, or a medium, heavy, fast. A medium, heavy, fast is really good for your open hook stuff, and a medium, heavy, moderate is as well. But the best moving bait rod for me would be a medium, heavy, moderate. You can get by with a lot of stuff with that one. I love a medium fast because I do a lot of topwater spook fishing, and a medium fast loads up really good and can chunk that sucker a long ways. And that's why I tend to use that a lot more than I do the other ones. So, whoo! All right, let me get caught up. Let's see. Let's get rid of somebody real quick. All right. Black Bass Anglers, a Lumacraft John boat, a good boat. What motor and trolling motor would you use? Yeah, they're pretty good boats. They're made. Well, they're currently made in Texarkana, or not Texarkana, Arkansas, I believe. My mind just went totally blank. But anyway, and it's all welded. The motor I would get would be. I always ran one with a trolling motor, but I did have an 8-horse tiller Mercury on the back of my 14-foot John boat years ago. I loved it. Get an 8 or 9 horse tiller if it's like a 14-foot boat. You're not going to go super fast, but it's stable. Get a wide John boat. Don't get a narrow one. Get the widest one you can, and then get about the largest motor that you can put on it, and you should be all right. But I love a tiller steer. They're a lot of fun. So trolling motor, 40-pound thrust probably. So Bob says you better pay your kid good. The videos look awesome. He's getting paid. He's making good money. That's for sure. I'm definitely giving him some. He loves it too. He loves it. The only problem is he loves to fish too. So I only get about a third of a day of work out of him. Oh goodness. I appreciate all those comments about him. Hey buddy, how you doing? What 7-foot medium heavy casting rod do you recommend that has bigger guides that accommodate a leader knot? What is the name of that rod? It's the Mojo Bass rod, and who makes it? St. Croix, I believe. That's the first one that pops on my head. The 13 fishing ones are all medium micro guides. They're not micro, but they're medium micros. I tie the FG knot and it goes through micro guides just fine. If you don't want to buy a new rod, I'd sit down, take a few hours and learn how to tie the FG knot, because it comes right through micro guides. You don't even hear it coming through them, and you should be just fine. So, how do you handle being crowded by boaters and other anglers? Very good question. And I'm going to give you my answer. I don't care. I don't care if there's 100 boats on the lake. I don't care if there's jet skis going around me. I've had days where I didn't catch a fish until a boat went over where I was fishing. Seriously, I was on Pickwick and I was fishing a boat lane and I was catching fish. Every time a boat went by, I'd make a cast behind the boat and I'd catch a fish. At Gunnersville, I had a guy purposely, I was fishing a kayak tournament. He purposely ran over my spot on full plane and flipped me off on the way by. And I threw right behind his boat and caught not the biggest fish of the day, but it was pretty close. Literally right behind his boat. So it doesn't bother me. When I've got people fishing my spot that I'm sitting there, I know I'm going to catch fish there. I know I am. So the other day I had one guy here and my son over here, all of us casting to the same spot. I was the only one catching fish. So it doesn't bother me. Biggest thing is it's all up here. Let it go and just keep fishing. The motors and the boats running around stir the bait fish up and get the bass excited, and you will catch fish. So, oh my gosh. Okay, so this question is old school as it comes. I was thinking the other day, what did we do without GPSs? So it says, could you explain triangulating for offshore fishing? So before GPSs, this is how we found a spot offshore. Okay, I'll give you a for instance. I had a brush pile, and you guys know Ryan. This is the young man that used to live with me that died of an OD, of a heroin OD. But I was fishing. I was his boater in a high school. What do they call it? The Junior Bass Masters, and he was a senior in high school. And we had one more fish to catch to finish out our limit. We only had a half hour left in the day, and so I went to this spot where I knew there was a brush pile and 16 feet of water, but it was way offshore. And I taught him how to triangulate. I said, "Okay, Ryan, I want you to take, and on this bank right out in front of us, there's a flagpole. Line it up with the back right corner of that house and go straight towards it, keeping those two things in line." And he went straight towards it. Okay. And I said, "Okay, now look over to your left and you see the screen porch of this house. Look at the left door jamb. When the left door jamb of that screen porch lines up with the center of the door of the house, drop your bait." So he did. He went straight towards that flagpole in that house, looked over to the left. As soon as he got there, he dropped. He looked down at the fish finder, and there's the brush pile. That's triangulation. You just line two things up here, line two things up here, and go till they come together, and you'll hit your point. And it wasn't a brush pile. It was actually, I found out after I got my side scan a couple of years later, it was 4 pallets tied together right there at 16 feet deep. And he caught one fish, finished up his limit, and won the tournament. Whew, how's that for a story? How do you handle being crowded by boaters and other anglers? I already read that one. I'm getting behind. Dwayne Anderson. Been doing a lot of kayak fishing and switched primarily to bait casters. I have a great technique standing in the boat, but I feel limited sitting in a kayak. Do you have any suggestions or tips? I know a lot of guys that fish standing up all day long. The biggest thing is if you're going to sit down all day like I do, get rods with short butts. The new rods they just announced from 13 Fishing that I helped develop and design are their yak rods. They're on the Omen blanks and they got 8-inch butts, and that's because we got PFDs on and they stay out of the way. Still got the length, and as a matter of fact, you got longer rods because they still have 7'8" or 7'6" is still 7'6", but the butt is shorter, the handle's shorter, so the rest of the rod is out the front, so you got a little more leverage. But anyway, so that's the biggest thing. But the other thing is just cast off to your side. Think about your casting angles. The worst thing is to cast directly in front of you because you always hit your rods behind you. I'm making a video about this. That's the reason. I've been trying to get my son to do some graphics for me that are really hard. But yeah, the biggest thing is just sidearm cast is a lot of the things I do, but the biggest thing is just understand your casting angles and where you can set the hook. See, like I hold a bait caster in my left hand. I can't cast over here to my right side because I can't set the hook hard, and I'll lose a fish because of the hook set. There's so many little details that are next level kayak fishing that you'll see in that video when I have it out. So I hope that was kind of anywhere and everywhere. I hope you understood that one. Ed Wolf, he says, I'd also say the improved Albright comes through the medium micros. Okay, yeah, it would. It really did. If it's not too thick a line. I tried like 60-pound braid to a 20-pound leader once, and even with the FG knot, that's a little thick. But yeah, your typical 12, 15, 20-pound test, or 12 and 15-pound test line would work just great. Any tips for reading a fish finder? Ooh, that's a whole video series I've always been scared of doing, because it's more something you got to do right. I got to have hands on and showing you guys as you're sitting there asking questions. The biggest thing to understand is the more expensive a fish finder and the bigger the screen, the more adjustments you got to do to see all the finer little details. But trust it is the biggest thing. Trust your fish finder. If you see something on there, it saw something. It caught something. If I'm looking for bass, I'm always looking for 3 colors. I'm looking for, and it depends on your palette, so I can't say what colors it is, but you'll see it's not going to be a perfect arch. It may be a little blob. It may be something, but it's going to have an outline color, a second color, and a third color in the middle. Means it's a little bit bigger fish than normal, and it's probably either a bass or a carp or a catfish or something, but it's going to be bigger than your bluegill and bait fish. But it's so hard, man. I could go on forever about all the little details of it, but to put it in a video, I have not been able to do it. And I really want to. Maybe one day. I was going to do it this year, and then Ray Marine started messing around with sponsorships and doing all kinds of weird stuff, and I decided that I would hold off and wait until they made a decisions what they were going to do, and they did. So I'm not doing the videos yet. So, maybe next year. Let's see. Hudson Hollis, should you color your spinner baits? That's up to you, man. I used to. I don't anymore. I just see it more as it's all personal preference. Joey Bag of Donuts says, I enjoyed seeing Ryan in your videos. He was a smart kid and had a lot of fishing wisdom to share. Yes, he did. That young man, if you guys haven't seen those videos, go back and watch the videos that I shot with Ryan. That young man was the best angler I've ever known in my entire life. And that's why I worked so hard and tried so hard to get him clean from heroin. And eventually it just didn't work. But that son of a gun, he was the youngest person ever to win Co-Angler of the Year in the Walmart BFLs. And it was in the Bulldog division, and it was the hardest division in the country. And he dominated at 17 years old. He caught a 10-pound 14-ounce or 10-pound 4-ounce bass in a tournament. Holds the record. I don't know if he still does, but up to that point, it was the largest fish caught in the BFLs, in the Bulldog BFL, and just an awesome angler. And I miss him every day I'm on the water because he was so much fun to be around, and he could pick up the little bitty details. He got one bite, he could tell you how to catch that fish again. It was amazing. So, get a higher seat. No, I got to stop slouching in it. Thanks, Russ. Appreciate it. I'm a sloucher. So I have a bad army back, and so it causes me to want to slouch down after a little while. Thanks for catching that, though. I even have something to prop my feet up because of it. Hey, Gene, what's the best rod and reel setup for the Carolina rig? A medium heavy 7'6", nothing shorter, and you'll find it a lot easier to cast. It doesn't matter what brand. I used the 13 Fishing. 13 Fishing's coming out with some new rods that are freaking awesome, and I showed them last week. I don't have them with me now. But the V3, which is the new $100 rod, it's all white, and then the Fate Black is now the $80 price point, and it's a really good rod. So But anyway, but yeah, whatever 7'6" medium heavy is all only thing I ever throw a Carolina rig on. So what's the difference between a structure jig and a swim jig? A structure jig is a jig that you can drag on the bottom. So when it lands on the bottom, it stays with the hook upright and the hook doesn't flop over on its side. A swim jig is designed with a pointed nose and it's designed to swim through the water and get through cover and stuff like that. But if it sits on the bottom, it's going to lay over on its side and you're going to lose fish. The fish are not going to get it. So that's the difference between the two. A structure jig was made to drag and to fish on structure, which is the changes in the bottom, on the bottom, in rocks and that kind of stuff. But cover is better for a swim jig, like grass and wood and stuff like that. A swim jig will come through a whole lot better. So what frogs do I use? I use the 13 Fishing Trash Panda. I'm very, very partial to that one because I had a lot to do with the design of that one. It already has the hooks bent out. It collapses real well. It doesn't take on water. It walks real easy. You don't have to trim the legs. I really love that thing. I was really, really picky about how that thing came out. I didn't design it. They came to me with a design and said, these are the things that you've been talking about for 2 or 3 years. What do you think? And I was like, that looks pretty good. Let's do this, this, and this, but this looks great. But anyway, so that's the one. I use a Spro Frog, which is it's got great hooks. I bend those hooks out just a little bit. And then the Booyah Pad Crasher is the other one I have. That one just doesn't last very long. It's so soft. You're guaranteed a good hook set. It just doesn't last very many fish. So that's the only drawback to it. But I do use it, and it catches the snot out of them. Any idea why it's really hard to find low gear ratio reels for left-handed reels? Yes. First of all, there's more people that fish right-handed than they do left-handed. So there's not a lot of demand for a left-handed reel. There's even less demand for low gear ratio reels, like the 4, 5s and the 4s, the 5s, and even the 6s, but you can find left-handeds and 6s. And so it's a lot of money it costs a lot of money to produce a left-handed reel. You've got to retool stuff and everything else. So there's a price point that they have to reach. And sometimes they just can't for the numbers that they're going to sell and the cost that it is to produce them. They just can't do it. And that's why they don't do it. So, yeah, dude, it's tough. It's tough. But that's part of doing business. That's one thing I've learned over the last few years dealing with 13. They want to keep the lowest price point that they can. But there comes a point where they're going to be losing money and they're just not going to do it. And every company is kind of that way. So which is better, boat or kayak? Woo! Hudson Hollis, you had to ask that question. I love my Alumacraft. I love to get out on big water in it. It is so much fun to find fish with the big boat. It's more fun to catch a fish out of a kayak. And I do a better job of catching the fish that are right there out of my kayak than I do a boat, because a boat, I can leave and go somewhere else. If I'm not catching them in just a short amount of time, I can leave. In a kayak, I'm like, I'm not catching fish right here, but I know they're here, but I can't go way over there and go fish for them. I've got to figure out how to catch them right here. So for instance, I've been catching all those big ones this week. And I know the guys that are fishing the tournament against me, especially the guys that are fishing the lake that I'm fishing, don't want me to talk too much about it. So I won't, but I'm going to tell you, I sat in the same spot for 2 hours, maybe 3, and didn't move and made the same casts over and over and over again. And about 1 out of every 40 casts, I was catching fish, it seemed like. But it's just one of those things. It just forces me to stay right there. So a boat for finding fish and a kayak for catching them. And it's so much fun to catch a big fish out of a kayak because it turns you and it pulls you and it's just a blast. So do you need a jack plate if you live on a lake with rough water consistently? Do you need a jack plate? I'd get one. I would. I'd have one on there for rough water. Definitely. Just because you can make the adjustments that you need to. A hydraulic one. Don't get just the wrench adjustable one. But Yeah, big rough water, you kind of, on jack plates are good. And it depends on your boat too. If you're going to avoid your warranty, don't get a jack plate. But if you can, get one. So what pound braid would you use for frog fishing with medium heavy rod? Also any frog tips. I always 50 and above for fishing a frog. 50 and above. One, because 50 backlash is less than a 40. For some reason, that 40-pound braid, it's so light and the diameter is so small that it tends to backlash a little bit more. And set the hook hard. And a medium heavy rod is almost not hard, not stiff enough. So you got to try to rip their lips off with that thing, and you'll get a hook set. You really will, but you're really going to have to put the hammer to them to be able to do it. So, all right, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. I know I got way behind with a few of those questions, but I appreciate everybody joining me. Be sure, while I'm sitting here and taking a little break from running my mouth too much and reading, be sure to check out my website, flukemaster.com. I got hats, I've got shirts, I've got some really cool shirts. This is not one of them. This is one of my old shirts. I've been setting up camp all day, so I've been kind of sweaty. But I've got mugs, I've got all kinds of stuff. You guys go check it out and buy some Fluke Master gear. Try to get that out of there so I can get some new stuff. I got to get that stuff, a lot of that stuff sold in order to be able to get rid of new stuff or get some new stuff in. But it's all good quality. I don't sell cheap crap. This is a cheap shirt. It's already stretchy and but I don't sell that kind of junk. So any tips for casting a bait caster from low down in a kayak so it doesn't backlash? Always sidearm. Always sidearm from low down. Little roll cast will do. I don't ever throw straight out in front of me or straight over my head. Always sidearm, and you'll figure out that it's pretty easy to do it that way. I wish you'd do a video on walking baits while sitting in a kayak. I can do that. I can really do it with those new 13 rods, the short butted butt rods, because the butt doesn't hit me in the belly anymore, and I've still got my big old belly, although I have lost 7 pounds this week. It's anyway. Yeah, the short little butt rods should work really good with walking. That's for sure. What would you use when you go to a new pond? Same thing I do all the time. At new ponds, I'm gonna have a Ned rig on one rod, and I'm gonna have a Texas rig on another rod, and my third rod's gonna have something like a spinnerbait. Those 3 things on a new pond, but always a Ned rig. I can always catch fish on little ponds with a Ned rig. Let's see. And Jeremiah McKenna, for your question, which is what's the best bait to use for pond that doesn't get fished much, the Ned rig is another one. So same thing. What is the best deep crankbait rod? If you can find one that's 7-11, medium heavy, moderate, that's what I use for most deep cranks. Unless you're talking like 10XDs and 8XDs, those real giant ones. I fish those on a jig rod, a 7.3, 7.4 medium heavy. So, all right, Wes Ellis. I fish the New River primarily. What do you think about the Liska versus the SS-127? I would get the Liska. The SS-127 is a great lake boat. It is a really good lake boat. It is pretty good in rapids, but not on the New River. It's a little harder to turn. And if you're going to get the SS-127 and you're going to run it in rivers, do not get the little flex wings, because they'll prevent you from maneuvering as much as you need to. The 107 was designed for more moving water and rivers. So the SS-107 turns a lot faster and a lot easier. But still, it's not as quick as the Liska. So either the Liska or the 107, but don't get the 127. So look at the 107 before. But definitely, that Liska is I love that boat. That was a really good little short, small water boat. So with spin cast reels, you can make it a left-handed reel by swapping the handles to the other side. Yes, you can. I do that all the time. I did that when I had my arms hurt. I would switch back and forth depending on which one hurt the worst. Let's see. Dang it, where'd your comment go, Ed? I just clicked on it. Have you ever used a toad runner frog If so, do you have a scenario when you would throw it over a traditional frog? I have never even heard of that. A toad runner. Or is that a road runner frog? But I've never used that one either. So I don't know, man. Where do you think is easier to fish, tidal or lake? For me, lake. I suck at tidal water. Now, if I was Mike Iaconelli and grew up fishing tidal water, then I could probably say tidal water, but I suck at tidal water, man. Oh, man. Somebody needs to teach me how to fish tidal water because I really am not that good. All right. If your reels are in the sun all day, FSMZ Apex, I see your comment. I'll get to it in just a minute. If your reels are in the sun all day, like on a boat, does the gear grease melt off the gears? No, it doesn't. It does get soft. It will sling off on a hard cast, but I've never had it unless it's really cheap grease. I've never had that issue. So, all right, what combo should I buy to start out fishing but is not too expensive? I can't give you the best thing I tell you, and I kind of give this advice a lot, is you can buy a combo. Go to either Cabela's or Bass Pro Shops, buy a Cabela's or Bass Pro Shops brand combo, but keep that combo between 80 and $100 or $120, but 80 and up, and you'll get a decent combo. I don't personally like buying combos. I like to buy the rod and the reel separate. And if I was to do that, the reel between $50 and $75, or maybe even 80, and the rod between you can get a decent one for 50 and $100, and you'll be all right. So all depends on your budget, man. But yeah, that's what I would do. Let's see. If you would use outriggers on your kayak, how far out from the side would you run the floats? I don't know. I have no clue, Morris. I've never even talked to anybody with outriggers on their kayaks. Oh, that'd be something. I don't know. I wish I did. My bona fides, and I've had bona fides, I've had Hobies. They're all so stable. I don't see a need for outriggers. But if you have one, I don't know. I'm thinking of pictures of them in my head, but I wouldn't even be able to guess. I'd probably give you the wrong answer. Sorry, man. What spinnerbait would you use use a color of? What spinnerbait would you use a color of the water? I don't know. I don't know that. I don't understand that question. What would you suggest buying, a John boat or a kayak for the first time getting out on the water? That depends on you. It really does. I love to promote kayaks because I think it's a really good first boat just to get people out on the water. But my first boat out on the water was a John boat, and I loved it. I was all over Clarks Hill Lake, and Clarks Hill is 71,000 acres. I was all over that lake with that 8-horse tiller. I put a deck on the front. I had a pedestal seat. I had a rod locker. It was decked out to as much as I could deck it out. And so I love a John boat, but I'll tell you straight up, a kayak is a really good first boat. So I just got a text from my wife. All right. Let's see. There we go. What color spinnerbait would you use in the color of the water? Dakota, I'm going to guess that you're thinking about colors of spinnerbaits for colored water or darker water. I have basically 3 different color spinnerbaits that I use, and that's it. White and chartreuse, and a color that's called firecracker, but basically it's clear with a little bit of blue and red glitter in it is what it is. And I use that for super clear water, and it's only like a fall bait, but mostly white and chartreuse. And those 2 colors are the ones I use 99% of the time. So I'd go with that anytime. White and chartreuse in dirtier water, and you can even fish white in dirty water, but white works really good in clear water as well. So, how do you fish thick duckweed? Duckweed floats, so I typically will fish something underneath it, but I've also found that I don't catch a lot of bass underneath the duckweed. But when I do fish duckweed, it's usually a Texas rig with only like a 3/8 ounce weight, and I vertical fish it. I'll drop it down through the duckweed and shake it a little bit, and I'll pull it out and drop it back down and shake it over here, and I'll just work my way around. And I just treat it like it's a matted vegetation. And I'll catch a few fish, but I've never caught a lot of bass out of duckweed. So I'm adding gear track rails to my kayak. I'm assuming that's what you're adding it to, Jeff. What are the best mounts to put on there? Yak Attack makes those the new mounts for Yak Attack that mount on there, and you can put all sorts of different attachments on it. Go check out Yak Attack's website. But they got good rod holders, and it's just really simple to use. They're micro adjusting. You can adjust the rod holder left and right without it falling off. It's a really cool setup. But those are the ones I use on my kayak. I use the Zuka 2 for my net, and my gosh, my mind just went blank. What is the name in the other one? And I can't remember. Somebody will know on here what the name of their other new rod holder is, and I cannot believe I forgot it. But anyway, those are the ones I use. The other ones are they have cam locks. They just roll around and they lock your rod on there, and I use those for my rod holders. So, ever heard of a spook, a flood technique? If you have a 3-way swivel with a fluke attached to one end and the zoom fluke attached, a spook. I don't understand that, Wills. He says 3-way swivel with a fluke attached to one end and a zoom fluke attached to the other. I'm assuming you meant a spook attached to one end. I have never even seen that, man. That's nuts. Mighty Man Quivers, Clark Seal. I'm in Augusta, dude. The majority of my all of my videos for years came. I lived 15 years on Clark Seal, or down south of Clark Seal in Evans. And so, yeah, dude, most of my videos from back in the day all were on Clark's Hill. I love that lake. Really do. What situation do you use a Mojo rig? Submerged grass, and it's shallow submerged grass, so less than like 10 feet of water. I love to fish it through milfoil, but it works good through any kind of grass. But usually when the bass are hiding, and the kind of grass I'm looking for is the patchy stuff, maybe a clump here and a clump here and a clump here with spaces in between and stuff like that. But it drags really good through milfoil and hydrilla. And it's kind of a Carolina rig that stays on top of the grass and doesn't get buried down in it. And then when you do get it hung in the grass, just a little shake and it'll come right out. So Josh Thibodeau, any plans to come to Louisiana for redfish? Not any plans, but I am sick and tired of not being there. So I'm probably going to go this fall. Even if it's by myself, I'm going to be down there this fall. So what line and size of line would be to teach my nephew to use a bait caster? Cheap line that he can destroy, to be honest with you. Get some, and don't teach him with braid, because everybody says, yeah, braid's really easy to learn a bait caster on. It is. It's really easy. But then switch to a different line, like a monofilament or a fluorocarbon. Then you got to learn all over again because it's just not the same. So what I say is get some 12-pound test monofilament, cheap stuff like Trilene XL, which is a really good monofilament. Get it, and Big Game. Trilene Big Game is really good too. And put it on there. That way, when he destroys it with backlashes and just learning, it's no big deal. You just pull it off, put new stuff on. But go watch that video that I made where I taught my nephew how to cast a bait caster. And that'll really help you. It gives a few little tricks, like putting a tape on the spool to prevent really bad backlashes and that kind of stuff. Gets you some really good tips to be able to teach him that. So, Solomon, you got a really cool thumbnail. That's the reason why I posted on it. I can't figure out. I thought you had purple hair. Now I see the bigger version. I thought you had purple hair. Anyway, says, I used a Texas rig this evening, but no luck. I didn't use a bullet weight, but rather a shaky head with a soft bait Yamamoto worm. That's too bad, man. That's yeah. Hold on a second. I'm trying to, with soft bait Yamamoto worm. So you were using a shaky head. Yeah, you could still probably have caught fish. That's okay, man. You did pretty good. I just bought a 99 Ranger R73 a month ago. Engine is 115 two-stroke. Works great. But I think of repowering down the road 2-3 years to a Mercury 115 XPS. Do you think it's worth it? Yeah, I think the whole world's going to 4-stroke. But and I think an XPS is a 4-stroke if I remember correctly. I could be wrong. I don't know a lot about the Mercury motors, but I will soon, because the Alumacrafts are going to start having Mercuries on them. But yeah, that's what I would definitely start looking at a 4-stroke if that's what you want to do. So let's see. Have you tried color changing fluorocarbon? I have. Back when it first started, I bought some, and I think it was fluorocarbon that changed color, and I can't remember what that was called. That was the nastiest, most horrible line I ever put on a reel. It worked really good for backing when I was putting braid on. I would put it on the reel, and then I'd tie the braid to it and put the braid on it. It was a really good, and it lasted forever as backing, but gosh almighty, that was a horrible line. I hope that if they've got it coming out again, I hope it's better. That was nasty back then. I mean, it was, you talking about kinking up, and just memory was horrible. How much leader should I put on my reel? I like to go the length of the rod, or 1.5 times the length of the rod is usually where I start. With my spinning rods, I'm a little bit different. I'm trying this year. I was at a seminar, a Bass University seminar, and Mike Iaconelli was talking about how much leader he puts on his spinning rod. And he literally will tie the leader on, and then go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then cut his line. So he's got like 20 feet of leader, and so I'm trying it this year to see whether I like it or not. I don't know. The jury's still out, but I typically would go 1.5 times the length of my rod. So Aiden Whitaker, that is one sexy hat. I know, brother. You like it? Even says Bulldogs on the back. Look at that. Go Dogs. Cannot wait. I want them to play football this year so bad. I can't stand it. Favorite boat snack and beer. My favorite boat snack is pistachios. And I have never drank beer, so I don't know. I don't have a favorite beer. My favorite drink is water with a little bit of Mio squirted into it, and that's about it. So I'm pretty cheap. And then if I get hangry, I always have an oatmeal somewhere in my boat. And oatmeal is like one of those heated meals. You'll have to lick it up. They're great. They're only 8 ounces though. So literally they're not going to fill you up, but they're going to keep you from losing your mind from being really hungry. So, let's see. Steve Potts says, I was in Fort Gordon for training from 93 to 94. When were you stationed there? I did my on-the-job training as an X-ray tech in 97. And then I came back there in 2001 and finished up my last 20 months there. So, and then I stayed in Augusta and lived there for another 15 years. So, what is your method for putting and keeping Z-Man soft plastics on screw locks? Oh, it's hard to put them on screw locks. Just keep pushing and turning, and then put some super glue on it. Is the only way I know how to do it. So there you go. David Sink got you with that rod holder I was talking about from Yak Attack, the AR2 rod holder. So that's one. There's another one that's got a little cam lock on it that I was thinking about. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it. What's your favorite soft plastic bait? Ooh, I don't have one. I have so many different ones that I use throughout the year. But I try not to have favorite baits, because then I get stuck on one and I don't let the bass tell me. So let's see. I want the bass to tell me what they want that day. What are some good spinning rods and reels that you recommend? Now, I've been Bone 23. I've been sponsored by 13 for about 5 years. And so 13 Fishing makes really good reels and really good rods. They got some dynamite bait casters coming out. The new Concept A is an absolute workhorse. They've done a lot of things to sure it up and to make it even better. And the C is incredibly light. You'll learn more about that later, but that's beyond the point. You're looking for spinning rods. My favorite 13 Fishing spinning reel is a Creed K. And if I remember correctly, it's only $60. It's like $50 or $60. It's not, I think it's $50. It's not that expensive. It's made of aluminum. It's really, really sturdy, and my kids beat those things up, and they still are really good spinning reels. The rods, it just depends on your price point. Somewhere between $50 and $100, and you'll find a pretty good spinning rod. 13 does make good spinning rods, but it all depends. I hate to push them directly. You guys know me. I just show you what I use and let you go decide yourself. But you know, keep that price range between 50 and $100, and you'll find a pretty good spinning rod. $70, $80 is a really good rod if you're looking for a spinning rod. What a thought, Illumicraft. I thought Illumicraft only used American-made Evinrude. Evinrude shut down a week and a half ago, completely closed their doors and laid everybody off. So Evinrude is no more. And so they COVID-19 put them out of their misery, I guess. I don't know. It's a great motor. Don't get me wrong. I love my Evinrude. It's a beast of a motor. They just could not get over that hump of having a bad reputation after the Generation 1 E-Tex. So I guess that's why they shut down. But I love my Illumicraft, guys. Like I said last week, I don't care what's pushing behind me. It can be two turtles pushing my boat behind me, and I will still be in an Illumicraft. I love that boat. So, but they signed a deal with Mercury, so it looks like I'll be having a Mercury motor on my next boat. If they decide to keep me, I don't know. They haven't made that decision either. If you get hungry, you need a Snickers bar. It's not on my diet anymore, unfortunately. TJ Davis, thanks for the $5. You guys that donated this live, thank you very much. You're so awesome. I really appreciate it. So, would you rather fight Greg Hackney or both Lee brothers? Woo! Neither. I don't know. Jay Lee's a little squirrely. I don't know. I have to check. But man, oh man. Well, this reminds me, since we're towards the end of this deal, end of this month, I am fishing one-on-one on a Facebook Live. It's on Angler's Facebook page. It's the last Sunday of this month from 4 o'clock in the evening to 8 o'clock in the evening. Mano-a-mano against Dave Lefebvre. He's going to be up wherever he decides to fish up north, probably Lake Erie, slamming smallmouth, and I'm going to be somewhere along the Tennessee River trying to catch something. I haven't fished up there in a year, but I'm not going to leave it any excuses. I'm going to fish my tail off for 4 hours and try to beat the snot out of that man. But also go to Instagram or go to Angler's Instagram page or my Instagram page and look at the promo we're doing for that, where you can get 20% off of all 13 fishing gear on 13 Fishing website. But gosh almighty, I can't wait. It's going to be a blast. And you guys have got to get to know Dave Lefebvre. He's got a great personality. Him and I have been done several things together, and we get along real nice. But we've already started the trash talking behind the scenes. So it ought to be a good tournament. But with that, I'd like to thank everybody for joining me. I've got to go and take care of my family. We're out camping down at Rocky Mountain. I've got 25 of my relatives down at Rocky Mountain that I've got to go entertain. I just took an hour to come and do this, but I appreciate all the comments. I'm sorry I wasn't able to get to everybody's comment. I don't read very fast and I talk too much. So, but like I always say, be sure to introduce somebody to fishing. Introduce them to my channel. Let me help you teach them how to fish. More importantly, get out on the water, go out and catch some fish, and have a great day. We'll see you.